Hello, this live stream is not just about George Galloway and Judge Napolitano and their convictions, leaving out and putting in their sources at A through Z. Here, Anthony. Other is being and has been communicated for James Madison and the founders behind him and his plan, as we were directed to understanding. And that's principle, because he's the only founder we know the name of specifically. And it was his plan that George Washington agreed to help them and use that plan. And some retired English general and whatever people he had by him did not have means to counter those internationally. More than England. And more than 13 colonies were entrenched in America. Before America was America, before America's founders were even born, sustained had been against Native Americans, all for their unities, all the same way. The people doing that were involved with that, they were also being used remotely by hyperforeign, so to speak. Everyone wants them to use their own differences, other people's differences, statistics. The beginning of the Old Testament says only defend right here. It doesn't say sometimes. No one even knows about that part of it. Has a key right up front. It says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together. And the part that comes before it. And that comes before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and Adam and Eve and all that. In other words, now they have the Old Testament, New Testament. They don't even know about that in the Old Testament. It says only defend right here. In other words, but they're not saying debates on this A through Z. That's why in other words, the religions, the religious books themselves, they were written with consciousness of the breaching methods, uses of differences. Tactical ulterior from that hyper difference, so to speak, which has been generating. Show the ancients. We are a totally different species body, made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. Whole bunch of different individual bodies. And they're a whole different species bodies, themselves made up of a whole bunch of different individual bodies. So we can discern the individual identity of value/value progression that is generating all things. Vaccines. I can't force people to believe this. But nature itself shows when people deny or try to say something is more, well, that's why they have the right to lie. Then we have the right to debate about or to say things we don't agree with people, but they change and fake us with conversations with religions. Russians, American, Ukraine have roles with psychiatry, with courts, and with prisons. For example, it's only concentrated there, and the difference of guilt there next to it, and or all the places tied to them. There are businesses and houses next to Hartford Hospital, involved with a bunch of people, intercities, involved directly and indirectly, planting evidence on my street. One time I had to raise my voice for a few days, right after my father died. It was demonstrated to me that there were intercities, there were police forms involved with that. Same ones who attached me to fake conversations with them and being at the police station as a kid and now as an adult. I was down there. I didn't have one word of conversation with one officer at the police station. Increasingly interstates, people associated with the Wethersfield Police Department and other Connecticut police departments involved with them criminally, with retired police chiefs. And then they pretend it's personal too. I'm speaking about the acts. And the method /S. You guys have readings of statutes of limitations. While what's recorded is names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and next to the World Trade Center right before the World Trade Center attack. From inside the court, they put a sequence shift as collusion /S, whoever did that, with names on all sides of that case, too, just attached to fake and changed communications, inter and intrust cities, by overt criminal enterprises, private ones, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, their family members, neighbors of them, same people tied to his lawyer next to their lawyer's office, a bunch of people tied to the spots with a Jonathan Maiano. I did not know him. They had me stay back with the teacher that made me stay back. I never had a personal conversation with my wife. She's involved with that. She made me stay back. She has some roles with people with Washington, D.C. and her roles with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes and relative delusions. Her roles with a Mike Pandolf, increasingly with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions who have and have had roles planting fake motivations with a whole bunch of other countries and the people involved with that. And on all sides of the campuses planting evidences. Whiting forensics is increasingly with a Joshua Julian, who was just brought up by Ron Adams. Ron Adams said he was at a wedding with Judge Napolitano. A Ray Collusion and a Joe DeMauro said that there are people with the name Napolitano and tied to them. I never had a word of conversation to a girl. I don't know why they brought me there. But I keep finding out they're recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed all along Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that. A bunch of people and their educators from Wethersfield, included have roles intercities with proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart. There were more families involved with that than now. More Russians are involved with corners of the street at a grammar school I went. I caught them involved with some untimely deaths. Wethersfield police and other police forums keep recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. People with the name Scalora are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And that's reportedly a cousin of people named Collusion and DeMauro, a shared cousin of theirs. And I don't know him. They have in other words, I don't know him. Increasingly, people tied to the state judicial branches in conjunctions to it and to that, like Wethersfield Pizza House, has wire crime acts and methods, identity thefts and frauds, intercampuses with Wethersfield police and with New Britain Superior Court people, with the state judicial branch offices. Well, I meant with New Britain Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, increasingly has foreign and domestic intelligence families involved with all kinds of abuses of little kids, elderly, and veterans at the same time. Notice how the veterans' homes look just like those buildings in the background behind people in rap videos like in New York City, while the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born, and roles with a torture, factory nature, extortion, and slavery method were entrenched. And they still have replaced what our founders and what nature itself communicates and communicated about this. See, people don't know this because your campuses were left criminally foreign influenced / hyper-criminally foreign influenced, so to speak. But this is traceable. So Whiting Forensics has people with the UN involved with the Bob Chase, involved with foreign and domestic military and Navy people, Air Force people, some military families that have been planting evidences with the police departments and with sexual and medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Now they're trying to imply that that's why they have acting coaches involved with people on corners of the streets with stories with WTNH through the years. And on Church Street in Old Wethersfield is increasingly involved with judicial corruption that is individually grouped and together. They have relative predicate acts with facts method /S roles recorded. But they've been forging and switching names and refusing to identify themselves legitimately. A breaching method showed them that could be discerned and that they need to hide with the actual value of their readings of statutes of limitations. Wethersfield police have recorded themselves incapable threatened. They faked conversation with me as a kid, and other kids who did go speak with them. They used them to put sequence shifts, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, fake conversations with me, forced them that. They gave depositions on that. And I learned more and more about that. Those are increasingly people I caught involved with the principal obscure nature. I caught him involved with worse child abuses. A principal child abuser, they were forcing him. A former police chief, Cintron, is playing a coward game with people reported tied to him, like Mazzucato. In that corner is increasingly people tied directly, like a John Maiano, is involved with sequence shifts, with intelligence families involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids. I don't know. I don't know if what he knows about that, or if he knows about that, but he's involved with the sequence shifts and people in his confessions saying different things about it tomorrow. He's involved with investigators, a whole bunch of people with New Britain Superior Court and Connecticut's District Court, and people next to the state capitol have collusions with a John Maiano and with other people, other police forms associated with the Spada family. And nothing personal, Spada. And the Della Fera family made these confessions, and they did too. She brought up a Fred Grisey. A Fred Grisey has roles with some probate court judges, involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, involved with wire crimes and police forging and switching names, refusing to identify themselves legitimately. The courts refuse to identify themselves legitimately too. They have predicate acts methods, the branches of government, individual and coupled. But these are also people with former mayors and conjunctions to them. A former mayor, Gold, and his daughter. He's increasingly one of the people with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, people who made timed nonverbal confirmations and demonstrations to me of their /acts with fax methods and with the method that they don't even know. In other words, but to an extent they can't be honest about. That method replaced right from, there's a human fact sheet nature breaching method. Nature shows us itself. That's one of the things that all the different laws that hurt the types of rights, as they call it, the types of people, the types of differences. And Judge Napolitano said something. He said there's an amendment that notes that we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. You guys are, in other words, you guys are making, see, you know more than these prison BS, leaving out, accepting more, not even allowing people to say things. They have credible threats of violence, which is against the law. They interbranch with the people. These are people with triages across the states. With the mental health care side, mass fake transcripts there. There are also tactically delusions, or I'm not even a doctor. I can delineate delusions from the criminally born influence, fact, achieving nature, quality aspects in nature of the doctors and the interbranch who are not doctors with the respect for it. That's why they can't even respond. You guys understand? You can't call the police. They fake transcripts. Chris Walters and people with the name Spada also have roles with phone companies. FBI in New Haven. There's spots next with WTNH. Has a bunch of people with FBI involved all along Route 175 through time. Involved with digital crimes, the Wethersfield Police Department, their Facebook page, the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court, further the Facebook page of the campus of the principal child abuser. And now they have some of the parents that brought their kids into it. There's an O'Neill family that recorded, they don't even know me. They're making up things with the former police chiefs and other intelligence, and they're fishing too. They have whiting forensics involved with them too, with Saudis and foreign and domestic Navy, military, Air Force. Mark Violet involved with people with the Air Force and their neighbors, involved with the intelligence agencies, and the family members of this. There's a probate court judge in the confessions of a father of a Mike Della Fera and a Chris Della Fera. I don't know them. They tried to make a fake exception to make it look like other, with people I completely don't know at all, like a Joshua Julian too. He's one of the ones right on the Facebook page of the principal upskirt nature with some black KKK themed, Italian themed, Latino themed. They're using their own differences, other people's differences, to pretend passions and emotions. That's why how they keep like types of rights. In other words, this is why the state is not supposed to have anything to do with religion. They have criminally poor influence, tactically delusions, raw uses of differences, collusion /s. Again, nature is communicating, showing us its body of difference generating totally different species bodies of individual bodies, generating why and how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. Its difference is being shown to us as our own that we could evaluate here, or we have demonstrations of it, of ourselves being and having been using systems tactically ulterior from its own. Individual demonstrations of it by nature, grouped active ones, like criminal insidious nature itself, and simultaneous and/or progressive ones increasingly. See, but we have self-guided roles with this because the breaching method maintained itself left entrenched. Our founders left declassified for us to allow someone to have free speech to speak about this. And the collusion /s. Increasingly, people the difference of the guilt at or next to the state corrections offices. Lance Cuddy is one of the ones further involved with women, involved with abuses of kids, sexual and medical, with the FBI, and with people with next to the state capitol, and or next to the state. I never had a class, never saw him on a campus in my life. Lance Cuddy, he's one of the teachers involved with the WTNH, with the FBI, with fake news, and with people. There are educators and locations in West Hartford increasingly involved with the people from Wethersfield, with the state judicial branch offices and the corrections offices in conjunctions to that are manifest that way, relative /hyper relative, because they are being and haven't been used remotely. A whole bunch of people tied to the neighbors of her, apparently a wife of a Stephen Stockwell. They're involved with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, scams, falsified police reports, wire crime acts and methods. Also with a Brian Bonin and people tied to body dumping spots with his neighbor associated with him. I never saw him on campus in my life too. He sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm all along Route 3. They have something to do. Also, people with the name McCord are involved with the Mike Pandolf, with all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions, and those lawyers involved lawyers are used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Tarantolo has cover-ups with WFSB that faked conversations with me. The interbranch won't get onto paper, and the Wethersfield, in other words, they're stealing my identity. Multiple police departments with the same house /s, and one's tied to them. These are also 911, 911 police department, police phones families involved with all kinds of scams relative to the fake transcripts too, and the World Trade Center attack with the extended family members of ones involved time collusions with the Saudi attackers. Note the effective uses of words like extremism and radical. Criminally foreign impulse, tactically delusions raw. Their uses of their differences, they're playing a shell game with the parties. They're playing it for the hyper foreign, though they were child abused. They can't even speak about James Madison properly because they had left out with why they had declassified for themselves why and how they did not have free speech. So one must teach. Please get them on paper, one name in sequence, into branch. In other words, Quinnipiac University has a bunch of people tied to a Fred Grisey involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids and people with bakeries who have syntax recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with investigators that repeat fake things to them. And then they repeat that to the investigators and they use that as truth. They're involved with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders. retired police chiefs with the same house/S increasingly involved with them with these predicate acts. And with Fox Connecticut News since before Judge Napolitano was no longer with them. A whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and co-defendants of his, like a Thaddeus Grabowski, is involved next to Fox Connecticut News with a bunch of people on Hangdog Lane, where it runs into the 2-route highway. And their conjunctions like Route 3 and conjunctions to that, like the state judicial branch offices. Increasingly involved with this Brian Bonin too, and his neighbors with wire crime acts and methods, and people involved with the inter services. And the Dillon family is one of the ones with them. But this judicial branch offices has wire crime acts and methods with the Wethersfield Police, also with Wethersfield Pizza House. So I never had anything to do with what's his name? Stephen Stocko. Whole bunch of educators and people tied to a Zano family and a Collusion family also have roles with predicate acts with a Stephen Stocko, with multiple child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart, first force. Rick Ciampaglione, I never seen him around, man. In other words, one time I remember there's an exception. They tried to make an exception with a Tim O'Brien. I don't think, in other words, and they're like the between the police departments. These are people acting in phone conversations, spreading rumors, locking people to collusion/S with them. Their roles, the names next to the state capitol, increasingly as one's inter-campuses and intra-campuses involved with predicate acts methods. More Connecticut campuses, Rocky Hill campuses have more like that for their kids and the intelligence families with psychiatry and with the databases and the exceptions. They have everyone else with them too. A whole bunch of people tied to with Jonathan Maiano with the security of the campuses, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with people that have the houses and businesses and people tied to them next to Harvard Hospital, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. An FBI director has roles with a bunch of people, in other words, there are proofs that he's one of the ones involved with the investigations. Investigators use remotely criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. In other words, and identity theft, fraud, slanders, John Maiano. He sought me out and begged me to let him drive me to school when I had to stay back because I had to hide this too. Increasingly, my speech class teacher has roles with Washington, D.C. with those students and people that ran the there's also a Celeste Wells. I never had a class with her. Never saw her around. She tried to make one exception. Oh, time around the corner. Increasingly, they're involved with people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences at campuses with other countries, overt criminal enterprises, and private ones with grammar school kids, middle school kids, high school kids, and colleges sickly distinctly, and corners of streets, and relative body dumping spots, and their roles with names next to them. Mark Violet, in other words, and Justin Kavinsky sought me out to confirm things. I didn't even know who they were. Their roles with my neighbors, with the police departments, their roles with the different, in other words, not legitimately with unmarked police forms. So please get them on paper, one name and sequence, and get the now. Fake mansion, bah. And then get me off of fake conversations with Channel 3 News about the World Trade Center attack while I caught them involved with murders, untimely deaths. All this stuff is recorded on Facebook. They're hiding confirmations that were made on Facebook, and they took away my Facebook page to hide that. Increasingly, the state judicial branch offices has roles with body dumping spots and names next to it involved with various organized crimes with the networks and names next to them. The difference of the guilt of the intelligence at the networks or next to them, there are manifest use /S of that. There are all kinds of cover-ups. Breaching method showed the suits and ties, counters, exceptions, the names of the people, the sciences. How they have to, get away with how they have used the identity the sciences share. Through and as systems, individual, finite, grouped, active in increasing ways that can't be defended and afford to be, let alone to protract short words properly. You guys aren't supposed to be making allegations of phishing even when you have true crimes. You guys have no idea how long the collusions have been ordered for a method by quality aspects in nature inside that. It is manifest when you have nature of debates. When you have A, therefore B reason. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. That is not clear, not because people didn't do their homework, because people who are criminal insidious natures of bullying and logic, in other words, self-value rules, otherwise sensing too, self-value rules, otherwise sensing for the breaching method, any body not self-value rules, including that body is a majority of people, including if it's an entire country together. Countries A through Z have a hyperforeign breaching method that made bad things that need to be responded to syntactically, therefore physically too, but improperly. But and it's maintaining names A through Z, blaming other things, others yourselves, and missing too. All exceptions too, using all exceptions to prevent from being demonstrated. How we could put down natures of industries and make hyper positives out of negatives. Nature itself shows us to check between to make sure that we're not making criminal insidiousness natures of positives out of negatives. Nature itself shows us there's a difference between criminal insidiousness natures of peace, therefore, and hyper peace. We have been systems tactical ulterior from the one, in other words, that uses black pupils, whites of eyes, how we are a species body of individual body. We don't have time to have another system or to debate things that are not debatable. Have that gotten away with relative to where we can record a discernment, use / self-value of criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw principles, treatments by the names of the people, the sciences. Black pupils, peer. Get them on paper, one name and sequence, please. C means appear. There's no statutes of limitations problem. You guys are refusing to identify yourselves. Weathersfield police recorded themselves involved with identity theft fraud. They just faked transcripts, including interbranch, including with the court next to the World Trade Center and the people involved with that. Nutbags. Get on paper, one name and sequence. Get off my name. Stop pretending you know me and repeating fake things with this Joe DeMauro too. People with these names, Joe DeMauro, Tony DeMauro, another. In other words, Apollo DeMauro is also recorded involved with people with the name McCord, with all sides of criminal and civil cases and the depositions and their lawyers involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, sequence shifts, predicate acts, and confessions of a John DeMauro too, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones with little grammar school kids and middle school kids. His talk about raping them too, and his confession about that as a threat too, involved with my 5th grade teacher. A Mr. Pruzzi has roles with a John DeMauro, Joe DeMauro, and a Paul DeMauro, and their cousins and their uncles and things like that, and people from with and their roles with foreign and domestic medical families in the houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital, involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists. They have World Trade Center predicate acts roles with the news too, and other journalists and their family members. You guys, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Get me off the fake conversation with WFSB. and then get the interbranch on paper with them. Now, I want a response for this.